It started with a missing 20 here, an overdraft fee there, the kind of thing you could shrug off as a mistake if you were tired enough, busy enough, willing enough to believe that the person sleeping beside you every night had nothing to hide. She wanted to believe that. She really did. For years she'd told herself that every couple had rough patches, that money was always a sore spot, that little slips were normal. But normal didn't explain why the grocery bill seemed bigger than it was, or why the same boutique appeared on her joint account statement when she hadn't bought new clothes in months. She'd open the bank app on her phone late at night, the baby monitor humming softly beside her, scrolling through lines of transactions that didn't add up, 2 lunches at that cafe downtown when she'd been home making soup, a hotel charge from a city she hadn't visited, flowers from a florist she'd never heard of. Her chest would tighten, cold sweat beading along her hairline as she forced herself to breathe. Every time she asked him about it, he gave her the same bored smile. "It's nothing, babe. Don't stress yourself out." He'd flick his hand at her phone like the numbers didn't matter. "Must be a mix-up. I'll call the bank. You know how they screw things up sometimes." She knew how banks made mistakes, but they didn't sign her name on a withdrawal slip she'd never seen. One Saturday, she tried to push it out of her mind. She needed groceries, needed diapers and wipes, the mundane things that kept the house moving while he made excuses. She waited at the checkout line, half distracted, until the cashier gave her that polite, pitying smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your card's declined." She laughed at first, a nervous, dry sound. "It can't be. Try it again." The cashier did. Same polite smile, same quiet "I'm sorry." She left the bags there, cheeks burning, heart thudding so hard she thought she might throw up right there by the free cookie samples. She called him before she'd even buckled the baby in the car seat. He didn't pick up. He sent a text 10 minutes later, "Relax. Must be the bank again." That was his line for everything now, relax. She didn't relax. She sat in the parking lot with her phone pulled up, scrolling backward through statement after statement. And suddenly the pattern was obvious, hidden in plain sight. Every time she covered the bills, the food, the real life that kept their roof over their heads, there were these odd withdrawals for family gifts. Errands. Mom's birthday. Except his mother's birthday wasn't 3 times a month. And his mother didn't buy handbags she could never afford on her own. That night, after the baby was down and he'd drifted to sleep on the couch with the TV humming in the background, she opened his wallet. She'd never done that before, they were supposed to be better than that, weren't they? But the pit in her stomach was louder than any promise she'd made to herself about trust. Inside she found the receipt, crisp, folded, still warm from the afternoon's errand she hadn't known about. A withdrawal slip with her name signed in neat, looping letters. The signature looked perfect. Too perfect. She could barely manage that flourish when she was signing holiday cards, let alone a bank slip for hundreds of dollars. She stood over him in the living room, receipt trembling in her hand, listening to his soft, oblivious snores. He looked so harmless, sprawled out in his sweatpants, the glow of the TV painting him innocent. But she knew better now. There was nothing accidental about this. There was no bank error. This was the start of something she couldn't unsee, a tiny crack in the wall she'd built around her trust, splintering into a fissure so wide she could feel the draft through her bones. And for the first time since she'd married him, she stopped asking why would he do this, and started asking how far will he go. She told herself she'd wait. That she'd watch him a little longer, gather more proof before she confronted him, but the paper burned a hole in her purse all week, that neat little signature that wasn't hers mocking her every time she logged into the bank app. Every cup of coffee she bought, every time she tapped her card for diapers or formula, she thought about the number at the bottom of her balance, a number that felt smaller every day, like the walls were closing in. The slip came on a Thursday evening, almost boring in its casual cruelty. She was folding laundry on the bed when his phone buzzed on the dresser, her name on the screen, as if he couldn't even be bothered to hide it. She didn't mean to snoop, not really. But the message preview glowed so brightly in the dark room that it was impossible to ignore. Thanks again, sweetheart. Mom says the bracelet is gorgeous. She can't wait to show the girls at brunch. A bracelet. She put down the stack of onesies, blood roaring in her ears. He'd told her he'd skipped lunch all week because they needed to tighten the belt. He'd told her they couldn't afford to fix the leak in the bathroom ceiling. He'd told her to be patient, to trust him, to stop being so dramatic. But apparently, his mother's wrist needed to sparkle more than her ceiling needed to stop dripping. He came home that night whistling, actually whistling, keys jangling in his hand like he hadn't left a gaping hole in their savings account. She waited until he tossed his coat over the kitchen chair, until he kissed the baby's forehead and made his stupid jokes about how work was busy, busy, busy. She sat there across the table, receipt and text printout side by side, her fingers tapping the grain of the wood until he finally noticed. "What's that?" he asked, frowning a little, that same practiced wrinkle in his brow that used to make her want to soothe him. Now it just made her want to laugh. She didn't answer. She slid the paper toward him. Watched him pick it up, watched his eyes flick over the signature. Watched the faint tremor in his jaw when he read the text she'd printed, word for word. "You're going through my messages now," he snapped, going straight to the offense, like he'd tripped and blamed the floor. "Your mother's bracelet." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Asterisk my signature. He scoffed, an ugly sound that didn't suit his carefully combed hair, his casual, good guy charm. Asterisk it's not a big deal. You'd just overreact if I asked. She stared at him, the words so sharp and hollow they almost knocked the air from her chest. Asterisk so you forged my name instead. He rolled his eyes, actually rolled them like she was being childish. Asterisk you act like I took it for myself. It's for my mother. She's family. You know she's been stressed. She laughed, quick and bitter. Asterisk so your mother needed a diamond bracelet to deal with her stress? He leaned back in the chair, arms crossed over his chest, that smug half-smile creeping in. Asterisk oh, come on. Don't make this ugly. You have money. It's our money. You spend it on nonsense too. But she knew exactly what she spent it on, the groceries, the mortgage, the baby's crib, the car seat, the late-night medicine runs when their child spiked a fever and he claimed he needed sleep for work. She knew every penny she'd earned, every corner she'd cut, every shift she'd picked up while he played hero to a woman who never saw her as good enough. He stood, snatching the papers back as if they were his to take. Asterisk we're done talking about this. I'll handle it. That was his mistake, I'll handle it. Like she was a loose end he could tie off with a smile and a lie. She sat there long after he went upstairs, the baby monitor hissing softly beside her. She felt the rage settle into her bones, cold, clean, unshakable. The signature might have been a forgery, but the lesson was real. If he could sign her name without asking, then she'd use her name to shut every door he thought was wide open. She could have let it sit, stewed in the lie, pretended to move on like he wanted her to. But the problem with pretending was that the numbers didn't lie. Every time she opened the banking app to pay the gas bill or buy formula, she saw those neat little charges, all tied to his mother's favorite boutique, the jewelry store downtown, the overpriced spa on the edge of town. She'd built a life where every penny counted, and now she could see the way they spent it like it was pocket change, hers to theirs. So she drove to her mother-in-law's house one rainy afternoon, the baby strapped in the car seat behind her, cooing at the drops sliding down the window. She didn't know what she'd say, not really. She just knew she had to see the truth with her own eyes, no more guessing, no more giving them the benefit of the doubt they'd never given her. The front yard looked the same as always, trimmed hedges, the fake garden gnome she secretly hated. But the car in the driveway was new. A luxury model. She stared at it for a long moment, rain pattering on the windshield, before hauling the diaper bag over her shoulder and carrying the baby to the door. Her mother-in-law answered like she'd been expecting her, lips painted too bright, a silk robe tied loose over a blouse that looked suspiciously new. "Oh. Look who's here." The smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. She stepped inside. The living room reeked of those overpriced candles she bragged about at family dinners, the ones she said she splurged on once a year. Except now there were 3, each in a different scent, arranged carefully on the marble coffee table next to a gleaming new jewelry box. The baby gurgled happily in her arms, oblivious to the weight in the air. "You look tired, dear," her mother-in-law said sweetly, leaning in as if to kiss the baby but never quite touching him. New motherhood is so hard, isn't it? She didn't bother with small talk. "I know about the money," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. She was proud of that. Her mother-in-law blinked, a flicker of something nasty behind the fake concern, then tilted her head. "Money? Oh, I suppose he told you about my birthday gifts." It wasn't your birthday. The older woman laughed, low and bitter. Isn't every day a good day to treat your mother? He's such a good boy. Always knows how to take care of family. The word family hit her like a slap. With my money. Her mother-in-law didn't flinch. In fact, she stepped closer, lowering her voice as if they were 2 co-conspirators. A good wife knows when to share, dear. You have everything you need, roof over your head, that sweet baby, food on the table. Why begrudge a mother a little luxury when she's raised him so well? She felt her hands tighten around the baby's blanket. The older woman saw it, and smiled wider, like a wolf showing its teeth. "You think he'd pick you over me," she murmured. You can't even keep him happy enough to come home on time. You're just the bank account. I'm the mother. It was that last line that did it, "You're just the bank account." Like she was a slot machine that spit out cash on command, too small, too soft, too polite to ever shut the door in their faces. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just shifted the baby to her other hip and let the silence stretch between them. The older woman smirked, thinking she'd won, already turning away like the conversation was over. But as she stepped back out into the rain, baby held tight against her heart, she felt the cold rage settle into something clear. They wanted to use her? Fine. They'd learn what it felt like when the tap ran dry. She'd already done the hardest part, seeing exactly who they were. The next time her mother-in-law needed a treat, she'd have to figure out how to pay for it herself. And the next time her husband thought about forging her name, he'd remember that conversation, and the look on her face when she left. She didn't slam the door when she got home. She didn't throw plates, didn't shout, didn't let him see the rage that was slowly transforming into something sharper than anger, resolve. He was sprawled on the couch, same as always, half watching TV with his phone glowing in his hand. Probably texting his mother. Probably sending her sweet emojis to thank her for understanding him while his wife overreacted. He barely looked up when she carried the baby past him, the diaper bag heavy on her shoulder. "Hey. You get what you needed?" Like he didn't know exactly what she'd seen, what she'd heard. Like he thought she'd come home, cry a little, then let him kiss her forehead and promise never to do it again. She hummed something vague, too quiet to invite more. She changed the baby, made him a bottle, tucked him into the bassinet with his favorite stuffed fox. Then she locked herself in their small home office, the same room she'd used to pay every bill, file every tax form, double-check every penny they made because she'd been the organized one. The good wife. The safe pair of hands. She opened her laptop, fingers trembling just once, just long enough to remind her this was real. Then she started pulling up old bank statements. Years of deposits, withdrawals, and the growing rot of unexplained expenses that had slowly drained the life she'd built for her baby's future. She took photos of every forged withdrawal slip she'd found in his jacket and glove box, her signature floating above numbers she hadn't agreed to spend. She uploaded them to a folder she labeled insurance, because that's what it was now. Protection against the next lie, the next time he'd say you're imagining it. The hardest part was sitting across the desk from a lawyer the next day while the baby napped in his carrier at her feet. She felt so small in that tidy office, but her voice was steady when she laid out the story, the forged slips, the boutique charges, the gifts he said she'd agreed to. The lawyer didn't flinch. He just nodded, tapping his pen on a blank page that would become her shield. "We'll get your accounts secured," he said, matter of fact, like it was any other Tuesday problem. This isn't just theft. It's fraud. If you want to press charges, you can. She didn't. Not yet. She didn't want the cops showing up at the door, didn't want the baby to grow up hearing that his father had gone to jail for forging his mother's name. But she wanted the option. She wanted her husband to understand just how thin the ice really was under his feet. They opened a new account that day, her name only. Her paycheck was rerouted in less than 48 hours. She moved every penny she could legally take from the joint savings into the new account, not a single cent more than she was allowed, because she wasn't going to become the kind of liar he was. But she wasn't going to let him drain her dry either. Each night after the baby fell asleep, she double-checked her passwords, made copies of every receipt, changed the security questions he'd known by heart. She did it all quietly, methodically. He'd kiss her on the cheek before bed, never suspecting that she'd turned into a wall of locked doors right under his nose. The morning she saw him pack an envelope of cash she knew was supposed to be their emergency fund, she didn't say a word. She just kissed her baby's soft hair and thought, take it. Take one last shopping trip on me. Because she'd already made the call. The account he thought was endless was about to be frozen in place, every penny locked away behind her name. His mother could brag about her diamond bracelet to her brunch friends, but next time she'd be swiping a declined card while her son scrambled to explain why the well had run dry. It was almost poetic, the way it happened. She didn't plan every detail, life rarely works that cleanly, but the timing felt like something the universe handed her after months of biting her tongue. The bank manager had explained it simply: once she signed the final forms, the joint account would be locked for any withdrawal over $50 until the fraud investigation was resolved. Any charges that came through would be declined, and she'd be notified immediately. He told her she'd probably get angry phone calls. She told him she'd wait for them. The day it all hit, she was home folding laundry, the baby babbling on a blanket on the living room rug. Her phone buzzed once, then again, the notifications lined up like a scoreboard: declined. 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 Each one attached to the same high-end department store downtown, the one with the bright display windows and salespeople trained to treat everyone like royalty as long as their cards cleared. She didn't even have to imagine it, she could see it perfectly: his mother at the glass jewelry case, trying on bracelets she'd been drooling over for months, waving her son's card like a trophy. Him standing beside her, probably telling the clerk, run it again. It must be a glitch. Because that's what men like him did, right? They never believed the tap could run dry. The phone rang before the last notification even faded from the screen. She let it buzz twice, savoring the anticipation, then answered on speaker, voice calm as ever. "What the hell did you do?" His voice was strangled with rage, and for once, it didn't make her flinch. She glanced at the baby, who giggled and kicked his feet, delightfully unaware that his father was discovering how it felt to be powerless for the first time in his life. "I froze the account," she said simply, as if she were describing a grocery run. "You can't do that." Mom's humiliated, "They called security. They're saying we tried to scam them." She wanted to laugh, really laugh, big and loud, but she didn't. Instead, she tucked a clean onesie into the basket and said, "Seems fitting." He launched into his usual rant, the same one she'd heard every time she dared to ask about their money. "You're being dramatic. This is our money. She's my mother, she deserves." She cut him off for the first time in years. No. What she deserves isn't my concern anymore. The line went quiet. She could picture him, eyes darting around that fancy store, his mother's screech in the background as the reality hit. For a woman who'd always treated her like a doormat, that cold decline must have tasted bitter on her tongue. "We'll fix this," he said finally, trying to slip back into that soft, reasonable tone that used to melt her walls. "Just come down here and talk to them. Tell them it's all a misunderstanding." She smiled. Oh, it's not a misunderstanding. You forged my name. You drained our savings to keep your mother happy while you lied to me about being broke. You can tell the store clerk that. Or your lawyer." He sputtered, a sound that used to scare her when she was the one holding the smaller piece of the puzzle. But now? It sounded pathetic. Small. She ended the call while he was still mid-sentence. She didn't need to hear the rest. She knew what it would be: excuses, blame, promises that meant nothing. Let him explain to his mother how her good boy had left her standing red-faced in a department store, diamond bracelets slipping through her fingers like water. That evening, she sat on the couch with a cup of tea, watching the sun sink behind the neighbor's fence while the baby slept on her chest. Her phone buzzed again, more calls she ignored. It was quiet now. Expensive candles wouldn't fix that silence. Apologies wouldn't fix what he'd stolen. Her name was hers again, her signature, her money, her freedom, locked away where no one could forge it into another lie. The funny thing was, once the account was frozen and the last angry voicemail had played out, she didn't feel angry anymore, not really. Not the way she'd felt when she first saw the forged signature, or when she'd listened to his mother's smug words about sharing like a good wife. Now it was just quiet. A quiet that felt earned, like the hush that comes after a storm tears through and you stand there, soaked but still standing. He tried to crawl back, of course. They always did. He came home 2 days after the store fiasco, keys jangling at the front door like he was announcing himself, as if he still lived there in any way that mattered. She was at the kitchen table, a folder spread open in front of her, the baby asleep in the bassinet next to her chair. She didn't look up when he walked in, but she felt his presence hover like a cold shadow behind her. "You embarrassed me," he started, voice soft, trying that boyish wounded tone that had always worked before. You embarrassed Mom." She closed the folder calmly, slipped her pen inside the spine. I didn't forge my wife's name to buy jewelry for my mother. That was you." He bristled, she could feel it without even looking at him. He stepped closer, tried to lean against the table like they were partners in this mess instead of what they'd really become, the thief and the woman who'd finally locked the safe. "I made a mistake," he began. She cut him off with a single raised hand. It wasn't loud or cruel. It was final. You committed fraud. You stole from me. From your own child. You didn't just make a mistake. The word fraud made him flinch like a slap. She didn't need to yell. That word was big enough to do all the heavy lifting. He reached for her, desperate. Please, let's just fix this. We don't need lawyers. You don't want to drag family into court. I'll make it right. She smiled, and it scared him more than any shouting ever could. Asterisk, I already did. She handed him a single sheet of paper, a summary from the bank showing the account was frozen, her paycheck rerouted, her new account safe. Another document underneath it, a notarized statement from her lawyer about the forgery, every slip of paper ready if she ever decided to press charges. She could see the way his eyes jumped between the numbers and the line that made his stomach drop, asterisk, suspected fraudulent activity, under review. He looked so small standing there in their kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd once made him pancakes on weekends while he bragged about how well he provided for her. She realized in that moment that he'd never been the provider. She'd always been the one holding up the roof, he'd just gotten used to living under it rent-free. You're overreacting, he tried one last time, voice cracking when he saw she wasn't budging. Asterisk, this is my house too. She stood, folding the papers neatly, her chin lifting. Asterisk, no. It's not. The lawyer explained it to me. Your name's not on the deed, remember? You signed it away when we refinanced, with my income. This is my house. This is my money. This is my child. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, just a stutter of empty syllables. She didn't slam the door when he left that night, shoulders hunched, car pulling out of the driveway like a coward sneaking off in the dark. She didn't have to. The locks would be changed by morning. The joint account would stay frozen until the fraud investigation was complete. His mother would learn what it felt like to fund her shopping trips from her own empty pockets. Later, when the baby stirred and whimpered in the night, she picked him up, holding him against her chest. He smelled like baby lotion and something impossibly innocent, the only good thing to come out of a marriage that had turned into a lie. She rocked him gently, humming a tune that steadied her heartbeat. She wasn't the bank anymore. She wasn't the fool at the kitchen table, signing away her future for someone else's convenience. She was the lock on the door, the hand on the faucet, the one who knew exactly when to turn it off. And when she finally turned off the lamp and closed her eyes, she slept like she hadn't in years, not because she was safe, but because she knew she'd made herself safe. And no one would ever forge her name again.